The DC Universe has hundreds if not thousands of different characters, and while a large portion of its most significant characters have had an appearance or two in live action, some of them being a lot more, there is a large portion of the most important characters, and a lot of beloved ones at that, who have still never made a live action appearance at all. In this video, I'll be going over 20 of DC's biggest characters according to how many appearances they have in the comics, who have never appeared in live action, and whether or not they came close to appearing in live action, because there are a lot of cancelled movies and TV shows that never got made, including about some characters who still have never appeared in the medium, although some of the placements on this list actually include groups or certain characters bundled together, so it's going to be a lot more than 20 characters. However, there are still beyond that a lot of characters that I will not mention who potentially do deserve a mention, but the video can only be so long, so if you could think of some of them in the comments down below, let me know. With all that out of the way, let's begin. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe, and let's start with the least important out of the 20, making our way up to the most. The first character on this list is Terry McGinnis, aka Batman, or also known as Batman Beyond. There was actually a Batman Beyond live-action film that Warner Bros. Was developing in the year 2000, which is actually while the show was still airing, and actually it only debuted a year prior, so Terry McGinnis only existed for 1 year. They had a great opportunity to bring back Adam West as the retired Bruce Wayne in that movie, or since that movie never got made, now they have a great opportunity to bring back Michael Keaton as a retired Bruce Wayne for a potential Batman Beyond movie set in that same universe's future. But instead of going for that idea, which fans lobbied for a while, they did bring back Michael Keaton, but as an active Batman. The guy is 71 years old, and the main version in the DCU, that's one part of Batgirl that I'm glad never got to see the light of day, because it just never made any sense. Next up is The Question, aka Vic Sage, who was arguably one of the best and inarguably one of the most important characters in Justice League Unlimited, and as a character it seems like it would be easy to adapt him into live action. He's just a man, he doesn't even have any powers or any special skills other than like detective skills, so it wouldn't be that hard. The only part that might be difficult is his faceless face, but that is it, and that could probably easily be done with CGI. It is actually kind of surprising that he hasn't appeared anywhere. Like, he could have easily appeared on Arrow and fit in very well, and they even mentioned his city a lot, but he just never appeared, and there still has never been any plans to use him in anything. His Watchmen counterpart, Rorschach, has appeared in the movie, but the original, The Question, hasn't yet. The Metal Men are a group of crime-fighting androids, each one inhabiting a different material. There's gold, iron, lead, platinum, copper, tin, mercury, and their creator Will Magnus, a group of characters who it would be very difficult to adapt on screen, as it's basically impossible on a TV budget. They would require a lot of CGI for both their designs and their powers. So it is a bit limited in terms of the possibility for adaptation for these characters, a lot more so than, say, The Question. However, there was a Metal Men movie which began development in the year 2007, but nothing ever came out of it. I talked about this movie more in depth in this video right here, about a universe created out of the cancelled DCEU movies, of which this is one of them. The next placement on the list was going to go to The Grifter, a character from the Wildstorm universe, who has made a lot more appearances than you would expect, but looking into it, literally none of the Wildstorm characters, or any of the Milestone characters, which is a similar situation, have ever appeared in live action. These are two universes that DC owns, whose characters have fluctuated in and out of the main universe. The main characters from Wildstorm's universe who have appeared the most are Zealot, Caitlin Fairchild from Generation 13, Midnighter, Apollo, and Grifter, the latter of whom is the character with the most appearances, who, like I said, represents this placement on the list. The Milestone universe includes Icon, Rocket, Hardware, and easily the most popular out of any of these characters, Static, who had his own animated show, which is where his popularity comes from, but the Milestone characters have had far less appearances in the comics compared to the Wildstorm characters, and none of them would have been on this list if I didn't group these two universes together. Unsurprisingly, out of all these characters, only Static has ever had a chance or ever came close to appearing in live action, as a live action Static show was being developed in 2014 with Jaden Smith being considered for the titular role, but obviously it never came out. Next up is Starman, which is maybe the most used superhero title by the most amount of people, and the only one who has ever appeared in live action, which is on Stargirl, wasn't ever actually Starman in the comics. They had so many options for Starman, and none of them were Sylvester Pemberton, who was the Star-Spangled Kid, and then the very similarly named to Starman Skyman, but not Starman. The main Starmen include Ted Knight, his son Jack Knight, Prince Gavin, Mikhail Thomas, who is an alien, and Will Payton. There was one Starman project in development, a Jack Knight-centered Starman show with his father Ted as a supporting character, which was in development in the very early 2000s, but it was cancelled due to the failure of Birds of Prey, as this show was being made by the same creators who also did create Smallville, so I guess they're 1 for 3 in terms of successes with their DC property. This show was never made, and none of the Starmen, aside from, like I said, Sylvester Pemberton, has ever appeared in live action since. John Paul Valley, aka Azrael, was a very big character in the 1990s, but I would argue that he peaked in popularity in the stories following Nightfall, the story where Bane breaks Batman's back, as Azrael took over as the new Batman. Now, most of the Bat family have appeared at least once in live action somewhere, but John Paul Valley is the Bat family member with the second most amount of appearances who hasn't yet. Unless that is if you count the Azrael from Gotham, whose real name was Theo Galavan. I do not consider that the same character because Azrael is a title used by a lot of people, so I consider John Paul Valley as the character, and he has yet to appear. The next Bat family character is a lot more important, at least currently, and we'll get to him a lot later. Captain Atom is the most prominently appearing character from the Charlton Comics universe that DC purchased before Crisis on Infinite Earths brought it into the main universe, who has never appeared in live action. That being said, the universe as a whole isn't very well represented. I mean, Peacemaker has had the biggest appearance, Ted Kord barely appeared on Smallville, I already mentioned the Question earlier, and then all the other characters have never made appearances. Captain Atom's Watchmen counterpart has been in both the movie and the TV show, but the original has never appeared so far. I feel like his design might be a bit difficult to translate into live action, and I think on a TV show budget it's practically impossible, especially when it's combined with his powers, but in a movie it's definitely possible. In fact, they did it all the way back in 2006 or 7 with Fantastic Four Rise of the Silver Surfer, but I think that's maybe one of the problems. I feel like DC wasn't interested in a character that they feared would draw comparisons to the Silver Surfer design-wise, or maybe there just aren't any good Captain Atom stories to adapt because he just explodes in every single one of his appearances, and it's a shame that we'll never get to see him explode in every single one of his appearances in live action, or at least we haven't yet. Animal Man is not exactly one of the most well-known characters of all time, but the fact that he's on this list means that he had a lot of appearances, and more so than any of the characters we've gone over so far. Plus, he had his own series, which was critically acclaimed. The series in question broke the fourth wall a lot, something that I assume Warner Brothers just will never do because they have this huge aversion to anything that can, in any way, cause any confusion to the common audience. They think their audience is the stupidest bunch of people ever, which is so stupid because the Deadpool movies are hugely successful and beloved, and also She-Hulk exists, and as far as I can tell, DC has no plans to introduce this character anywhere, but I do think that James Gunn would be very interested in adapting a character like this. It just seems like a character that he would like to adapt. Next up is Deadman, a character who has had many opportunities to appear somewhere in live action, but he avoids it like the plague. There was a Deadman TV show that began development in the early 2000s, which also was later optioned to the CW, who wanted to replace Smallville with another superhero show, but chose Arrow instead, meaning that somewhere out there in the multiverse is an alternate universe where the Deadverse exists instead of the Arrowverse. There's also a movie that began development in the year 2009. There was even a director being confirmed, but it never came out. There's also a canceled Justice League Dark project, which is a movie that began development in the year 2013. It never came out and has since been redeveloped into a TV show, which also I feel like only has like a 20% chance of ever coming out. Basically, it seems like DC really does want Deadman to appear in live action, but Deadman has been avoiding live action like the plague, which is weird because the plague wouldn't affect him. He's already dead, so just do it. Just appear in live action, Deadman. Next on the list would have been Chameleon Boy, the Legion of Superheroes member who has had the most appearances, who also hasn't appeared in live action ever, but there actually would have been other Legionnaires already on this list prior to this had I not bundled them all together. So this is going to be like 20 characters in one placement, because the Legion of Superheroes is a large group of characters, and like all of them have appeared a lot in the comics. The Legion of Superheroes have made appearances in live action, but they're never these big teams in live action. They're only ever trios, as on Smallville, they're just Lightning Lad, Saturn Girl, and Cosmic Boy, and on Supergirl, they're just Saturn Girl, Mon-El, and Brainiac 5, which together only make up 5 members. You could also add Phantom Girl and XS from The Flash, who in that universe were moved to the present day or near future instead of far future, and aren't the members of the Legion of Superheroes, or at least we don't see them as members of the Legion of Superheroes. The rest, however, weren't so lucky, the most prominent of whom I'll quickly list off. There's Chameleon Boy, there's Ultra Boy, Lightning Lass, who did appear on Supergirl but only in a picture, Shrinking Violet, Karate Kid, Dawnstar, Starboy, Colossal Boy, Princess Projecta, Sun Boy, Triplicate Girl, Shadow Lass, Timberwolf, Dream Girl, Invisible Kid, Bouncing Boy, Matter Eater Lad, Block, Polar Boy, White Witch, Feral Lad, and Wildfire. And there are obviously others, but there's no point in continuing mentioning. Every other character has less appearances than the ones I mentioned, so they probably also never appeared in live action. Next up are the New Gods, but only really the New Genesis side of things, as most of the Apocalyptians, other than like Calabac and the Black Racer, have appeared in live action thanks to Smallville and both versions of the Justice League movie. However, none of the characters from New Genesis have ever appeared in live action, and this includes some heavy hitters and members of the Justice League like Orion, Big Barda, and Mr. Miracle, the latter of whom is the character that this slot on this list represents, as he's the new god with the most comic appearances who has never appeared in live action, and there are others like the Forever People, Oberon, Forager, Lightray, and Highfather, plus Metron, who is neither from New Genesis or Apocalypse. All of these characters, at least most of them, and definitely the more important ones, would have appeared in the Ava DuVernay-directed New Gods movie, but alas, that movie never came out, and right now DC doesn't seem to have any plans to bring these characters into the limelight, which is a shame because they're pretty cool and it's a pretty interesting side of the universe. Then there's Jason Blood, aka Etrigan, who, unlike his teammate Deadman, has never been attempted to be brought into live action. That is in a solo project. He would have 100% appeared in the Justice League Dark movie that I mentioned earlier, but now that it's redeveloped into a TV show, I'm not so sure. His Etrigan form would have to be CGI, and his powers would have to be as well. I feel like if they bring him into a TV show, he'll probably end up being in human form like 95% of the time, which is kind of lame, so I think it's a little bit less certain now that it's a TV show that they're developing and not a movie. Much like Etrigan, I think Metamorpho hasn't appeared yet because of the high-cost nature of his design, which would have to be completely prosthetic, probably. I feel like that would look better than CGI, or it'd be more faithful if it was completely prosthetic, but his powers would have to have a lot of CGI involved with it, and that combined with the fact that he's arguably just not popular enough a character to be brought onto the big screen in a big budget movie, so it's not an easy choice to commit to using this character in live action on a TV show budget, because it would be very difficult to pull off. If they do ever bring him into live action, I do think that it should be in a big budget production, whether that be a big budget TV show or a movie, because like I said, it would be a very difficult character to pull off design-wise and power-wise. Cassandra Sandsmark, aka Wonder Girl, who replaced Donna Troy as the second Wonder Girl, actually has a lot of appearances in the comics, not that many less than Donna Troy. However, Donna Troy took a while to debut for the first time as a Wonder Girl, only appearing for the first time on Titans, while the rest of the Wonder Girls haven't. I'm putting the other Wonder Girls together here because there isn't really much to say about Cassandra Sandsmark, but there is about Yara Flor, a character who only debuted in the comics last year, in the year 2021, but a CW show already began development in the year 2020, before she debuted in the comics, because she was announced prior to her debut. And unsurprisingly, the show was cancelled, probably due to the lack of source material. However, Yara Flor not appearing yet in live action makes complete sense because she's such a new character. In fact, it would have been crazy if she already debuted only a year after her debut in the comics. However, Cassandra Sandsmark is a much older character. However, the Wonder Woman movies don't seem to have any interest in using the Wonder Girl character, and if they do, they'll probably start with Donna. So, unlike her other Young Justice counterparts of Impulse, Robin, and Superboy, she has yet to appear and doesn't seem to be appearing anytime soon either. Plastic Man is a lot like Deadman, and the fact that DC has tried to bring into live action at least 3 different times, but they never could. There was a Plastic Man movie which began production all the way back in the year 1992. I have no idea how they would have been able to make this character work in live action in the year 1992, or even like in the late 90s. So nothing came out of that. Years later, there was a release date which was confirmed for December 2009. That was a bit more realistic since it looked weird, but they did kind of do it in Fantastic Four, and Keanu Reeves was announced to play the role. But again, nothing came out of it. In the year 2018, another Plastic Man movie was in development, this time to be a part of the DCEU, which was also later reworked to have a female Plastic Woman in the lead. Thankfully, nothing came out of that either, and so far Plastic Man has yet to appear in live action. The stretchy powers of Plastic Man have never really been perfected on screen, so maybe he could be the first one to do so, but I'm betting on Fantastic Four in the MCU more. Next up is Power Girl, who, is basically just an alternate universe version of Supergirl, which is kind of what Melissa Benoist's Supergirl is. She's also older than the typical Supergirl, plus Smallville Supergirl was called Power Girl once. However, I'm defining Power Girl as an older Supergirl from an alternate universe who goes by the name Karen Starr, aka Power Girl. She also has to wear the white costume or something similar to it, and not just the regular Supergirl who has some references to Power Girl who is a bit similar. That's not Power Girl, that's Supergirl, so the actual Power Girl has never appeared in live action. And unless there's some multiverse story where the movie focuses on a multiverse event, I don't think Power Girl is likely to appear anytime soon. Damian Wayne, aka Robin, is easily the most important and prominent member of the Bat family who has yet to appear in live action. This is despite his huge popularity and prominence in the last 2 decades, both in the comics and in the DC animated movie universe. This is, I think, mostly due to the fact that if you were to introduce Damian Wayne, you would have to have a Batman who is like 20 years into his career, plus you would have to have Dick, Jason, and Tim all exist and established before introducing Damian. Plus, I mean, we didn't even get that until the year 2021, and even then, Tim Drake hasn't yet appeared as Robin in live action. I think if Titans continues a few more seasons, then Damian might appear, it is possible, but outside of that, I don't see it happening anytime soon, especially since the current Batman movie franchise is about an early days Batman, so unless he appears as a baby, he won't appear there. Second place is Green Lantern, and I mean like the entire side of the Green Lantern universe. We did see a bit of it in the Green Lantern movie, which did a good job of including a lot of the aliens who most people don't know the names of, but it's cool that they're there. But from the human Green Lanterns, only Hal Jordan and Guy Gardner have ever appeared, and the latter was only in a single pilot episode of a TV show that never got made. Plus, Hal Jordan was in a movie that just like everyone hates, and it's a complete failure. The rest of the Green Lanterns, starting with Alan Scott, has never appeared in live action, except Alan Scott technically has. He did have a cameo on Smallville, however that was only 2 seconds and he didn't have any lines, so I'm not including it. He might appear in a potential JSA spinoff of Black Adam, but nothing is confirmed as of now. Alan Scott has been around for over 80 years, and yet has no appearances in any form of media outside of just cameos. And this includes animation. The biggest appearance he has is in Justice League, where it's not even Alan Scott, aka the Green Lantern, it's Scott Mason, aka the Green Guardsman, a member of the Justice Guild, and even he didn't technically exist as a person, so Alan Scott has really been given the raw end of the stick, and he deserves a live action appearance. He was going to appear in the HBO Max show, but that has been reworked to include the next character on this list, John Stewart. John Stewart was my first introduction to the concept of Green Lantern through Justice League and Justice League Unlimited, and as much as I hate to admit it, I do have a lot of nostalgic bias towards this character, and it genuinely sucks how he, alongside the rest of the Green Lantern side of the universe, have been sidelined as much as they have just because of one failure of a movie. There was a John Stewart-led movie that was in development before the 2011 Green Lantern movie called Green Lantern Birth of a Hero. It would have starred and it was written by Corey Reynolds, but that idea was abandoned in favor of the Ryan Reynolds movie that ended up getting made. Later on, a Green Lantern Corps movie was confirmed for the initial DCU slate with a 2022 release date, but nothing ever came out of that. On top of that, on Arrow, John Diggle actually became a pseudo John Stewart with the introduction of his stepfather Roy Stewart, and later on actually getting a Green Lantern ring. However, he never put that ring on, and nothing ever came of that storyline, and regardless, even if it did, that's not John Stewart, it's John Diggle. And finally, the closest he ever actually got to a live-action appearance was in Zack Snyder's Justice League. Wayne T. Carr was cast as John Stewart for the movie. His cameo was completely shot, the CGI was completed, but then Warner Bros. Forced them to replace it with Martian Manhunter, but that is definitely the closest he's ever gotten to an appearance in Zack Snyder's Justice League. However, if the HBO Max Green Lantern show will ever come out, because it's been redeveloped to instead of focusing on Alan Scott, Guy Gardner, Simon Baz, and Jessica Cruz, it's just focusing on John Stewart, that will hopefully finally give him a proper debut in live action, and not all of these close or pseudo versions of the character, but a proper appearance. The other human Green Lanterns, Kyle Rayner, Simon Baz, Jessica Cruz, and Joe Mulane have all also never appeared so far, plus some alien Green Lanterns like Arigia, Sala, Katma Tui, and Mogo, plus the Blue Lantern Sate Walker, as well as basically every other member of the other corps, aside from Sinestro and Carol Ferris, who would become Star Sapphire. However, we have yet to see her as Star Sapphire. And number 1 is Wally West, aka The Flash, who is the character who has had the most appearances in this entire video, and it's crazy that he has yet to appear in live action. Much like John Stewart was my introduction to Green Lantern, Wally West was my introduction to The Flash, because basically Justice League was the first thing that I ever saw from the DC universe. I didn't even know about Barry Allen until years later. Wally West remains one of my favorite superheroes ever, and is equal, if not even surpasses, his mentor, Barry Allen. He was a founding member of the Teen Titans, a very prominent member of the Justice League, and the main Flash for several decades, and arguably the single biggest and most important DC character who has never appeared in live action. However, all that being said, it's just not true. He has appeared in live action. This entire video is a sham. The CW's version of Wally West is based off both Wally and Wallace, but at the time they were the same character. Wallace, or at the time his name was just Wally, was the New 52 version of Wally West. But since then, those two characters have become separate in the comics, and the Arrowverse's version is far more inspired by Wallace, so I just cannot count it. I cannot see this version of Wally as anything but an adaptation of Wallace West, a character who they have further and further made less and less like Wally West, as they changed his name from Wally to Wallace and now to Ace. He's much younger, he's in a completely different age group, he looks completely different, and they gave him a completely different backstory as he's the son of one of the Reverse Flashes. It's a completely different character, and while technically it is Wally West that we see on the CW, I cannot count it as an adaptation of Wally West, meaning that according to me, at least in my opinion, Wally West, who is like one of my favorite comic book characters of all time, has yet to appear in live action. However, he was going to in Justice League Mortal. Justice League Mortal was a canceled DC movie that was so close to being made. It was cast, it was going to begin shooting, but then the writer's strike shut it down. I think DC would look so different today had that movie been made, just because they would have gone to Justice League before Marvel got to the Avengers, and by the sounds of it, it looked like a pretty good movie. In this movie, Barry Allen would have been the Flash, and Wally West would have been Kid Flash, but Barry Allen would have died, and Wally West would have taken over as the Flash. That sounds pretty cool, but obviously it never got made, and I doubt Wally West will ever actually appear anytime soon. There is the potential of a sequel to the Flash movie, which is coming out next year, where he could appear as a Kid Flash, or maybe a new Flash TV show, since the Flash show is ending next year, this time focusing on a new universe where Wally West is the main Flash after Barry Allen died. I think the latter could be really cool, but the former can as well. Regardless though, it is crazy to me how Wally West, one of the most important characters in the DC universe, who also was absent from the comics for a while, has never appeared in live action. And that's it for this video, this half-an-hour video. This is going to be a bitch to edit, but let me know what your thoughts are in the comments down below. Which one of these characters do you think is the craziest that they haven't appeared yet in live action, and who do you want to see the most, and where do you think they should all appear? Let me know in the comments down below, and if you like this video, make sure to leave a like, share, and subscribe, and thanks for watching.